What's up, gamers? Hi, Guardians, and hello, Internet. Welcome to another Swoop Gaming stream. Very happy to be here. Today is Wednesday, July 12th, in the Lord year of 2023. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot going on, man. I've gotten some pretty positive feedback in the DMs and from friends on the video I released yesterday. My reactions to them reacting to their reactions. And it's just a funny spin on reaction videos with, obviously, you know, my take on not just the original poster, but the, you know, second reactor as well. So we're going to do that again today, and this one is going to be Destiny focused as well, and it's going to feature a video that was put out by Myelin Games, who is a prolific lore content creator, Destiny2 Twitch streamer. The second reactor is Aztecross, who is, you know, goes without saying, you know, one of the, you know, hardest working content creators on Twitch. I think he does branch into other content. I don't necessarily get an opportunity to watch too much of either of the gentlemen as much as I used to. Totally respect them. Never met either of them before. I do believe I had some Twitter exchange with Myelin, or perhaps maybe a comment on one of his videos years ago, but he was very responsive. And that's one thing I dig about Myelin, is that he is very engaging with his audience. I don't believe I've ever communicated at all with Aztecross. You know, like I said in my other video, you know, love an opportunity to, you know, shoot the shit with with these guys, you know, grab a drink with them at some point in the future. That'd be cool. Hear what they have to say. Sounds like a fun time. So this is Myelin's video on Bungie responding to LIGHTFALL retcon concerns. Okay, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with retcon, it's like a parachute. It's like an escape method. It's a way out of a narrative team to rewrite and restructure and take the narrative direction of a game, of a piece of art, what have you, and go in a completely different direction. Again, this is my base understanding of it. And basically isn't necessarily canon, i.e. the truth. It's just somebody's perspective. They equate that to like religious texts, right? Creation stories, what have you, right? Where some might consider it the truth, the gospel. Others might look at it as an interpretation, right? Someone else's perspective of something that, you know, fundamentally does have a finite answer, right? But the interpretations, the perceptions of it are infinite. Therefore, you know, retcon can at any point just pull that card and say, no, that's not necessarily what the truth is or what the facts are. That is just an individual or entity's perspective or communication of what had happened, what had occurred, what is. Anyone in chat, anyone in the comments, you guys have a different interpretation? You have a retcon of the retcon? Let me know. Myelin's video, I haven't watched. Aztecross's video, I watched a good portion of it, so I'm not necessarily going into this blind. Look, the way my short-term memory is fucking burnt, man. This is basically like a fresh reaction. I mean, it's not as if I, you know, watched the majority of it and like memorized the fucking script and said, okay, I'm going to go live and record this and publish it. My reaction to this is going to be like my reaction to them reacting to theirs. Diablo 4? Who the fuck plays that game?
Here recently, Myelin put out this video right here, and I want us to watch it, guys. It's called Bungie Responds to Retcon Concerns and LIGHTFALL Criticism. Let me do this because there may be some people in here that don't know what retcon is. Retcon In film, television series, or other fictional work, a piece of new information that imposes a different interpretation on previously described events, typically used to facilitate a dramatic plot shift or account for an inconsistency.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop it right here. You want my personal take right off the bat on retcon? It's fucking bullshit. Okay, it's weak ass, spineless writing. Okay, that's it. You know, stick to your guns. Use the gifts and the talents and the craft that you developed over the years, and that makes you the. And again, we're talking about Bungie here, but this branches out to every studio, to every like artistic entity that even is considering retcon or has used it. You know, use the talents that draw people to you, that allow themselves to immerse into your story, okay? To just drive through and complete the story arc, right? I'm not saying that you can't bring in other arcs that utilize the concepts of retcon, where this is my perspective on it. Haha, made you look, right? But if you use your artistic license to justify retcon, where it's like could be at any whim, or it's on a consistent basis, and it didn't necessarily, it wasn't communicated that that's the type of narrative direction that that piece of art, that game is going in from the beginning, right? To just pull that card, to use that artistic license, to pull that parachute because, oh, you know, we didn't dot this I and cross this T, or place this period on the story on the whiteboard when we were in development or in research. It's just it's a poor excuse. Ultimately, what consumers want is they want to be compelled and engaged, but it's understandable that everything comes to an end, right? But along that journey, we need indicators that this is the truth, right? Because what happens is, if it turns out not to be the truth or accurate or the facts, it just makes you question the time investment in what you had experienced when you were immersed in that content. It just throws it all away, and it like invalidates it. So straight off the bat, Sloop, do you think retcon's a good thing? No, I think it's fucking bullshit.
Revive, so an aspect of fictional work retrospectively, typically by introducing a piece of new information that imposes a different interpretation on previously described events. Now, let's let Myelin explain this.
Welcome back to episode 2 of Myelin's Moaning
And that was a
Minutes,
great explanation
where I talk
of
about
Cross
what's happening
to start
in
the
the
video.
community or what's happening at Bungie. I don't want to say drama farming, but there has been some drama going on again around the topic of retcons, and just so happens that Bungie's narrative team had a round table with games media, and they actually brought up the topic of retcon. So we do have Bungie's perspective on, the community's perspective of retcons and people being generally unhappy with the direction of the story. We also have a lot of commentary on LIGHTFALL and the players' reaction to LIGHTFALL and Bungie's response to that. So we're going to go over that too. If this is not your kind of video, that's okay. That's fine. I've got plenty of other content throughout the week. I've just uploaded a lore game show with Datto, Travel Danielle, and Leopard. So go watch that. That's fine. It happened on Twitch too. People were like, I'm not going to be here. I'm over it. I just want to enjoy my game and be done with it. I get it, right? But at the same time, I do think I can add to this conversation and hopefully not be so ranty, but still give reasonable criticism to Bungie, to LIGHTFALL, and the direction of the story. So let's have at it. Right, let's start with retcons. PC Gamer put some information from the round table with the narrative team, and specifically it related to the Unveiling Lawbook. Just in case you are not up to speed, essentially the cutscene with the origins of the witness mentioned the traveler as the gardener. And the gardener is a very specific word that is used in the Unveiling Lawbook. And it essentially is like the creation story of the universe. So it made a lot of people then go, oh, the witness is related to this in some way. And so one interpretation of that is that the Unveiling Lawbook is made up by the witness. And that has some people upset saying, oh, this is a retcon. So this is what they said in the PC Gamer article. Welcome to the problem that all Bible scholars have been trying to figure out, or may not have happened, and lining that up to actual historical events, says senior narrative designer Robert Brooks. Unveiling is a parable. It is effectively a religious text, and how much of that is propaganda and how much of that is a myth, how much of that is fact, is deeply unclear in the nature of the text. Brooks notes that when Unveiling first dropped, players did take it as literal gospel truth. Players believed it to be 100% fact. There was a literal garden, there was a literal gardener, there was a literal winnower. And now it's starting to become clear that those may not actually be just concrete ideas, but metaphors or things that are far less concrete and clear. And as we get closer into the final shape, more answers on that will start coming up. And the final shape, of course, will have a lot of answers about the nature of those conflicts. Brooks refused to offer any more hints on how this will all resolve, except for this. The contradictory nature has always kind of been intentional. Whatever the witness says, maybe don't trust it. They're just saying that, yeah, this creation story was essentially created by the witness, and some of it could be true and some of it might not be true. So, should we be mad about that? Let me give you my thoughts on retcons. I think there is a scale. This is my retcon scale. There's a scale for retcons. And at one end is something like the Witch Queen. I have no issues with what they did with Witch Queen. I thought it was fantastic. They took the Books of Sorrow and everything written in the Books of Sorrow, and they just twisted it a little bit, and they made a new story from it. For those unfamiliar, the Books of Sorrows talk about a syzygy, a god wave that forced the proto-hive to make a pact with the worm gods, and this sort of leads into the hive's history of conquest. In Witch Queen, they revealed that that was fabricated by the witness, so the witness essentially...
Okay, so... I think Aztecross uses a stand-up desk, right? I think he stands up when he plays and when he does like his recording, or maybe he like sits down sometimes and then stands up. I used to do that in my office, in my in my previous occupation, and I enjoyed that, right? Because if you're like in front of a computer all day, like even I find like even sitting down for hours at an end, you know, it's to promote your circulation, you got to stand up and walk around periodically. But he's always like bouncing around, you know what I mean? Which is like good as far as like the production value of videos, because it trains your eye. It's almost like he's unintentionally doing something intentional. So it's just a little funny observation.
Encouraged the hive down this path. I thought that was fine. I thought it was very respectful for what was written, and didn't contradict it, but just twisted it a little bit.
Which, by the way, went hand in hand with Savathun herself. You know, why Savathun was against the witness, and also just her demeanor in itself. It made sense that there was that she would be the one to actually uncover that deception, right?
And, you know, on the retcon scale, I don't...
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, who's better to uncover deception than the deceptionist herself, right? So that's pretty obvious.
Really feel like it's a retcon. It's an evolution of the story. Oppositely, I think at the other end of the scale, I think is something like, you remember way back with Warmind? Do you remember when they introduced this, is it just called Season of the Warmind? And prior to that season, all the lore was essentially saying that there were multiple war mines. They like looked after a planet each. There were these planetary defense systems.
Yeah.
And then that season came along and they said, actually, there's only one war mine. It's Rasputin. All the rest are AI. That to me feels very different on the retcon scale. It feels like it is rewriting the lore to suit whatever story they want to tell. It's not taking, or it's almost contradicting what was already written and rewriting it into something else to suit a season. Now, I 100% understand the need to be able to change stuff. I did work at, I did work at Bungie. I was contracted by Bungie to help out on the anthology project. These bad boys, volumes 1, 2, and 3. I curated the lore on this, and I had those conversations with Bungie at that time, because when these books were done, I was like, there's a lot of stuff in here that contradicts. Like, the war mines would have been one of them. Like, hey, now we know there's only one war mine. Like, are we going to change this stuff or leave it? And just to be really clear, like, I mainly worked with the products team, and if I had questions like that, it would be sent off to narrative, and they would give like an answer back. And the answer was always like, yeah, it's perspective. Like, there can be things wrong. Like, it's written from different characters' perspectives in the lore, and like, it doesn't matter that some things might say there's multiple war mines and some things don't. Like, that's the way it is. Like, we're not changing stuff now that we have more information. Like, it's all about, perspective and who's writing the lore entry, and these things exist in the game, and there can be inaccuracies in that lore, and that's okay. So I definitely understand the function of being able to change a story, and you don't really want to pigeonhole your writers into doing a certain thing. You want to give them a little bit of freedom, and you need to be able to change and adapt and tell a good story as you progress in a live service game. So they are 100% necessary. However, I do think on the retcon scale, with examples like Witch Queen, I think they bend the lore a little bit. They don't contradict or invalidate it, and they evolve the story. And I feel like the example with the War Mind, for me, and this is a very gut reaction, is very subjective, it feels like it invalidates what's previously been written. And I think one of the things that defines what happens here is the justification for it. If Bungie just responds with, oh, it's just all lies, it's just all perspective, like, don't believe it. For me, that really...
I have actually been a customer of BetterHelp for a little over 2 years now. And I was able to get matched up with a therapist in like 24 hours.
You better believe it.
Hours. They
really pushes it down to this end.
So I just want to pause it right here for a second. I know Myelin is really explaining himself well here. Okay, and I love what he's doing with this scale. You know, as Aztecross in the beginning of the video gave us the, true definition of retcon, right? Myelin is not only providing us with the definition, but giving us more in depth as to how the application of retcon, and in his opinion, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and how that affects the narrative team and the writing and the direction of a story, specifically here with Destiny. I'm surprised, and I don't watch every single video and every single piece by Aztecross. I know he's, maybe not so much as it was in the past, but he's predominantly like a PvP guy, but he does a lot of PvE. He basically he covers everything. But I think most people think of him as like a PvP player, right? I think that's like where his heart is in like FPS shooters, PvP, right? I think that's really like the core of his content, right? Despite him covering everything. The lore aspect, I think he's kind of like in the same ballpark as me. I've read most of the lore entries. I was even more of a voracious reader through Destiny, right? And that's when I first discovered Myelin. And I used to love Myelin's early videos, and he would do like a voiceover of his in-game play, and he would like slowly walk into like a certain area that he's like telling a story about or like revealing the lore about. And it was like the actual gameplay with him speaking in the background. I thought that was great. I loved it. And that was just like another kind of like something that I was doing like in my mind, you know, like almost like role playing myself as I played in my early days of Destiny. You know, each of my characters had their own identity and things like that. But yeah, like that early content he did was really cool. And but I'm just surprised that, like, you know, why isn't like Aztecross like piping in and really commenting on anything right now? I think it's because he's absorbing it just like I am. You know what I mean? Like, we're not like lore heads, despite the fact that we have an interest in the lore. So I just figured just he would be saying something a little earlier and just maybe elaborating on some of the points that he's making. But maybe he will be here, you know, and be coming up shortly.
Of my retcon scale. If Bungie provides like a cohesive reason for the change in story, it pushes it up the other end. And you know, when it came to the Books of Sorrow and the Witch Queen and the winner, the Witness, it was that the Witness wanted to claim the Hive before the Traveler did, and so it made up this story. And I think the issue I have with Unveiling is we don't really have any other reason for the Witness to be just making up the story. Like, why did the Witness give us this creation story? And then when Bungie responds with, oh, it's just, you know, it's like a Bible. It's just perspective. Like, we don't know what actually happened.
It is what it is.
We don't know what the truth is. We don't know anything. And my gut reaction to that is it invalidates a lot of previous lore, and it becomes hard to be motivated to read lore books if that's always the response. So, like, why should I read another lore book if in another 2 expansions it's going to be revealed it's also a lie and a perspective?
Okay, so again, I don't know why Cross isn't really like commenting on it. I think it's because he's just really like you know, he's just really soaking in what the knowledge that Mylin's dropping, right? But here's my take. Myelin, I agree with you 100%, you know, and I think like the reason I've kind of like let my foot off the gas in like being that voracious reader of the lore as I had been in the past is because of like this passive aggressive retcons that Bungie has been doing, right? And again, I think the scale is brilliant that you put up there. It really puts things into perspective. I agree with you 100%, and I'm sure when Aztecross decides to comment, he will as well. It's gonna. Why the fuck do I want to like invest my time and immerse myself in a story when like after the fact it's gonna be complete bullshit? And again, if that's the way the narrative, if it's always like shifting. It's one thing if it's like one arc, haha, I got you know what I mean? But if at any point reading a lore book or listening to dialogue, if any point in the future the fucking narrative team has just carte blanche to say, nah, that was just perspective, right? Or nah, that was a lie, right? Then it's like it completely invalidates all the information and the whole story that's put in front of you, you know? And it's just like, okay, let me just, you know, click and fast forward through everything. I'll appreciate maybe like the art and the visual effects of it, but the actual like meat of the content and the words coming out of your mouth and even the actions that I'm seeing through the art and through the visual representation of it, like I'm not gonna hold stock in it. I'm not gonna give any credence to it. I'm just gonna fucking fast forward through it and you know, basically just give me the loot, you know, so I can just, you know, run the same strike again.
I know that's very like an emotional response to that, but I also do think that's where a lot of people are with the current story with Lightfall and the current story.
No, that's a logical response.
I think
as
you
well.
also have to consider this in the perspective of Lightfall and everything that happened in there. And there were a bunch of things that happened in Lightfall that also didn't really make sense. We had the whole Black Garden narrative where the Vex created the Black Heart. And we've been told for years that they didn't know what the Black Heart was. And they just worshipped it because it was this darkness power. And we know the Vex can't simulate the light.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing. According to recent reports, get ready for, like, you know, to be fucking neck deep in Vex activity, right? Because, you know, God forbid we introduce like another like enemy race or enemy alternate. We're going to be, I guess, completing our story arc with the Vex, either in Lightfall or post Lightfall. I mean, you know, get ready to shoot bellies for the next 2 to 3 years.
The dark, and they worked out the best thing to do was to pray to it, essentially, because it was so unknown to them. And the reason the Vex don't win is because they can't simulate the light of the dark. And then Lightfall comes out and says, actually, one of them did create the Black Heart.
What?
And it was a replica of the Veil.
What, you didn't know
which,
that?
By the way, you don't know what the Veil is, and you don't know you don't know what the Black Heart is in the Black Garden.
Everybody
the whole
knew that
ending of
Aztecross. Come
Lightfall,
on.
when you get your Kvostov out and you try to shoot your ghost, the whole paracausal bullet has just been like something that's been on and off in Destiny's story and lore for so long now. Originally, it didn't matter. We had Elixni take out Guardians in way back when they sieged the city. We had warlords kill ghosts with shotguns without any sort of paracausality. Then they introduced in Forsaken that you needed paracausal bullets, and they doubled down on it when they tried to shoot Zavala's ghost. And then we're back to just like shooting regular Kvostov M4 bullets at our ghost, right? So there are a number of things that happen in Lightfall, and I think when you put the Unveiling lore book in that context as well, people are sort of moving down the retcon scale towards you're just kind of rewriting and doing a soft reset of the lore. And that is honestly my gut reaction to Lightfall, is they wanted to do a soft reset. They wanted anybody to be able to play Lightfall and technically understand what's going on. In reality, anyone could play Lightfall and be equally confused. It didn't matter if you had read 8 years of lore or you were a brand new player. None of that lore really helped you work out Lightfall.
Yeah, no, and not only that, it just wasn't good. When I see retcon or rewriting, guys, in my opinion, it's because you can't think your way out of this narratively. It's like what we talked about here recently about time travel. It's like, okay, we've exhausted all narrative avenues. What can we do? How do we get out of this situation? Time travel. Let's just throw time travel in there. But retcon, to me, this is a big issue because it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth, especially for my lore guys, where you feel like you do have a grasp on the lore of Destiny. And then you're like, wait, okay, that's not true. And then, all right, how many other things fall under that umbrella of perspective? That's a problem.
And I do honestly think that was the
Yeah, of course, I agree with that. The issue is the writers should be giving liberty to take the story in different directions, but it shouldn't be an after the fact correction or let's make a U-turn when they've already established what is widely considered canon. I mentioned before, it's one thing to have that one aha gotcha moment, right? Like what you thought was real isn't real. But if the door is open for anything that was established prior to be able to be manipulated, it's just, what's the point? Why should I invest myself in the story that you're presenting to me?
Intention, and then it's the beginning of...
The fact is, 90% of hair loss cases in men are caused by scalp condition, which is the consequence of one bad habit in daily routine. To check your scalp condition, just try to pinch the scalp. If you're...
The Final Shape saga, and then each season's going to progress that story up to the finale of the Final Shape. And that's kind of what they confirmed in this roundtable too. So in all the other articles, we kind of got that information. So in the Games Radar article, they talked about Lightfall being a narrative experiment to increase engagement for each subsequent season leading up to Final Shape. So here's the quote. Bungie leads addressed criticism of Lightfall's story and explained that the expansion was partly a narrative experiment to set up more engaging seasons for the current year. These are some of the most serialized and interconnected seasons we've ever done, senior narrative designer Robert Brooks adds. I don't think people will dispute if the seasons are really good and really cohesive leading up to Final Shape. And if it keeps adding to the story of the Veil and the Witness and the Portal, I think that's all fine. I think what people dispute is that it feels like Final Shape is a bubble that starts at Lightfall. And rather than be the end of the Light vs. Dark saga that started 8-9 years ago, it feels like we're sort of starting again with Lightfall and then 4 seasons and then finishing with Final Shape. They go on to say that things were left intentionally unresolved. So here's the quote. There's a lot.
Before he goes on with the quote, I have to disagree with Myelin there. I mean, yes, Lightfall story has its shortcomings, right? But as like a story, like the Lightfall expansion was awesome. There's a lot of things, like if you look at the expansion overall, it did a lot of positive things in like quality of life and upgrades and utility within playing Destiny and interacting with your character and your loadouts and what have you, that the game never had before, right? But as far as the actual narrative, the other story, like it's an awesome story in and of itself. It just wasn't explained and it had certain shortcomings throughout it, right? Like I'm not one to say the Lightfall campaign narrative was shit, right? Like I'm not going to say that because it wasn't shit, right? It was a story. If you like Destiny, then you'll like the Lightfall narrative, right? But if you want to put like your heavy critique shoes on, right? Or even if you're just like that casual fan and you're like, yeah, I like the story, but this doesn't make sense. Well, you're right. A lot of things didn't make sense. A lot of things weren't developed. And then according to the narrative team, according to this article that Myelin is citing in the interview with the Bungie narrative team, you know, that was done on purpose. So the following seasons throughout 2023 will expand upon those shortcomings and loopholes in the narrative. Is that working out for you? Is that something that you're putting the pieces together? No, that's the real fault right there, right? That's why people are like, this is bullshit. This is, I'm not engaged. This is lazy, you know, like, this experiment is failing, right? Like before we even get into next season and get the showcase, which everyone's going to be hopping on the hype train. I'm calling it right now. Okay. Myself included. But I'm not like a Bungie hater. Like I'm just a pragmatist. You know what I mean? I'm a realist. I understand what they do on the business side. But I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat something that, you know, I feel is a gaffe or a fail. And the seasonal model and like doubling down or explaining what was left out in the campaign in Lightfall right now with the seasonal model, it's not working. It didn't really fit in season 20, right? Like you had the Queensguard on one side of the universe and then you had Neomuni on the other side of the universe. And there was just like no connection right there, right? So like that part of the narrative, like it was like, what the fuck? That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? The seasonal model, Season of Defiance, explain in depth as to, you know, why we're Queensguard now and what Mara is doing with us, you know. But it's kind of like they all witnessed that, no pun intended, they all witnessed everything that happened to the Traveler, and then it's just like, okay, Osiris, you're just over here. Mara, you're over here. Earth is getting fucked up and the last city is under threat again. But, you know, whatever, deuces, guys, I got to help the old man out on Neomuni. It's just like, that's what made the narrative awful, right? That's what made the loopholes and things aren't explained and the what the fuck moments, you know, like things like that, you know. But like when you're doing the campaign, when you're doing a narrative, when you're experiencing that, like that was fine. Like there were definitely highlights and things that were awesome. It's just things needed to be expanded upon, right? But I'm not going to say it was shit. Let's see what else Myelin has to say here.
A lot of narrative threads that were left very intentionally unresolved to dig into and expand upon and feel the impact of, Brooks continued. And then from 22 and 23 onwards, as in the seasons, it's the ramp up and lead into the dive into the final shape. It's a very different shape than what we're used to some of the narrative arcs that might be done in a different way, and that's very intentional. What they're talking about is what they previously do is an expansion is usually the conclusion, like how Witch Queen was a conclusion to the previous seasons. It was a lead up to Witch Queen, and then you got the expansion, which I think everyone actually enjoyed. Once again, I don't think people dispute having seasons lead up to an expansion. I think they dispute LIGHTFALL not really giving any information, adding a big MacGuffin being the Veil, not explaining what it is, and expecting players to then pay for multiple seasons to get answers. And I think that's the bit that kind of gets me from like a consumer point of view, is it's very intentional that each season's going to answer those questions in the final in LIGHTFALL. So you have to buy those seasons to know what's going on. And then you have to buy Final Shape to get a completion to this story. I think what makes that even worse is
okay. So let me cut this off. So, Myelin, I know where you're going with this, right? So, Bungie is being, duplicitous, is being deceptive, and in their business practices to, acquire the consumer's money so they can get further explanation as to what was omitted or left out, or it wasn't fully explained in the original in the campaign, in the base expansion that you purchased. So if you want to learn more, kids, make sure you buy season 21, Season Under the Deep, and you get to meet Sloan again, right? Like, and just wait for season 22. That's just like their business model to bring in revenue, right? Like if that's the driving force behind them, implementing retcon, right? If not retcon, then just the way the story is dripping outside of what was omitted in the campaign narrative. That's just Bungie's prerogative, man. Like if this is an experiment, if that's how they're going to label it, I don't think Bungie does anything experimentally, right? But at the same time, I'm not going to fault them for instituting a business plan. You know what I mean? Like it's their business. Like it's not up for you and I to say you need to change your business model, right? Like they're doing what they're going to do. And as far as if the consumer, if the player just bought the base expansion, right, and hasn't purchased any of the seasons, right, and they want to know what the story is, man, let's be real here. That's where you come in, right? That's where your business model comes in. You're the one who's giving them the information, right? Which in turn provides you with revenue because people are tipping you on Twitch, people are Patreon you, bits, whatever the revenue streams that you're involved with, people appreciate the time that you put in to deliver that information. So, instead of them paying for the Bungie product, they're paying for your service to deliver that. So in short, what I'm trying to say is at the end of the day, if people don't buy the expansion, they could still play Destiny. But if no one's just buying the expansion to get the story, right? People are buying the expansion because they want to know the new story and experience it in game themselves. But if it's just, I just want to know what the story is, then I'm just going to queue up a lore video by you or somebody else just to get the information.
As if you imagine in a year's time where those seasons are sunset, like what does Lightfall then look like? If we get all the lead up and all the if all the seasons explain the Veil from Lightfall, and then those seasons get sunset as they do, how does Lightfall look as a singular product? It's a mess. They also talked about this trail of breadcrumbs and drip-fed content, I guess, saying, he says this trail of breadcrumbs is a way we're experimenting with new narrative delivery systems to tell different kinds of stories and shake things up a bit from what people have been expecting. I don't know how true that is. I think everyone expects breadcrumbs.
I mean, that's pretty much what we've been getting. I think this is just bullshit. This whole narrative experiment, I think it's just bullshit. There is a way to tell a story. And look, I'm not the best storyteller, you know what I mean? I make up some bullshit for my kid, but there is a way to tell a story where you could have actually, I mean, the entire Lightfall campaign could have been told so much better. We didn't have to have superb clarity on what the Veil was. I think the most annoying thing about the entire Veil situation on what the hell the Veil was that no one was really asking what the Veil was, you know? And as in the characters.
Meet your next pillow. Why do we make our pillow in the shape of a cube? I'll tell you.
Our character. We're just showing up, just blasting. And us as the player actually playing the game are like, wait, why is this happening? You know, we have these questions seeping into our mind. And so this whole like Bungie's, yes, you can tune in every single week right now and get a small snip of what the Veil is. Who is this? Sundaresh and all that, all those audio clips. But dude, the vast majority of people are not going to do that. You have an annual expansion, which is when the majority of people are playing your game. To me, that makes the most sense to narratively involve everyone. And so the throwing this, we're trying something differently, we're experimenting. No, it's because it was, in my opinion, it was just weakly told to begin with. And you've kind of, I guess, either exhausted all of the narrative avenues, or you just were like, we're just going to drip feed this. This is true drip feed. And like, for whatever reason it may be, you know, get us to buy the seasons and whatnot. Seasons don't have to be narratively tied to the annual expansion. You know, to me, you could still have a great season. It has lore implications, but it does not tie directly to the main annual expansion storyline. I don't think anyone thought Season of the Plunder just had some like just major narrative implications from Witch Queen to Lightfall. There, you know, lore people, deep lore people definitely picked up things from Plunder.
Whoa. Well, wait a second. Aramis becoming another disciple of the Witness eventually, the standoff with Rasputin, him sacrificing himself, like everything that happened in Plunder was a prelude that led up to that. So no, man, like, but I agree with what you're saying. You know, the liberties that are taken with Retcon are bullshit. I opened up this video by plainly stating that. Okay, everything that Myelin has expanded upon and now Aztecross is reacting to, it's almost like not enough, right? It's one thing to drop the Lightfall narrative, right, and not really go in depth as to what, like, the actual narrative when you're playing and the story that's being presented to you. Okay, it's one thing to have, you know, well, here's the Veil, we don't know too much about it, right? Here's a little bit of it, right? Well, maybe we'll find out in the upcoming weeks, you know, or exploring around, like, that content will be presented to. It's not necessarily in the next season, but maybe throughout that introductory season to kind of, you know, close up any like major plot holes. Well, that didn't really happen in Season of the Defiance. Season of Defiance was basically, well, while you're over in Neomuna, this is what you're also doing on the other side of the universe, right? And the other side of the solar system. So there's like, you know, huge like gap, you know, and then like in the middle of everything is, you know, all these question marks that are popping up, which is like the root, no pun intended, the root of the nightmares of everyone's, you know, narrative woe. So let's see what else Cross is saying.
But you didn't leave Witch Queen with a whole bunch of unanswered questions, and you're like, all right, I have to wait until season to plunder.
Right. So we didn't leave Witch Queen with a lot of unanswered questions, and we're almost done with the second season of Lightfall, right? So who knows, right? So let's not like thoroughly bend Bungie over and slam them into oblivion, okay? Like there's still the second half of the year. There's still 2 more seasons to experience, which could bring everything full circle and like make it all the points that I'm making and Cross is making and Myelin is making and any other any other fucker in front of a microphone, all the points that we're making, it could be like completely blown away and we can be like, Bungie, you did it, baby. You know, you tricked us, right? But you came full circle, you came correct, and now it makes sense. You're fucking brilliant. Take my money meme.
To get these answers. All right, let me let Myelin keep going.
Some drip fed content. Personally, I actually don't mind the weekly stories. I like them. But you know, some people like to binge watch their Netflix and some people like to tune in weekly. It's a very personal preference. So I don't think that's anything new. I think what's new about it is we had an expansion that just posed all the questions, and then you got to tune in each week of the season to work out what happens. What I would have liked to see in Lightfall was the explanation of this hidden city of Neomuna. All the stuff we're actually getting now about Maya Sundaresh and the Veil. Explanation about the creation of Cloud Striders. And I know some of this is in the background lore, but it should have been front and center. Like that was the interesting thing about Neomuna and the discovery of Neomuna. And the fact that it's got essentially advanced Siva there, which we haven't even spoken about yet on the channel, by the way. They have advanced Siva there. And instead we got introduced to the concept of the Veil and essentially a side quest of like a training montage of Strand. Okay, so in the press start article,
yeah, listen, and if I can just do a little, lore drop for you. Yeah, so we have the advanced Siva, right? But we've always had access to Siva, right? And it's just funny how we're willing to, envelop ourselves into the darkness, right? And use that paracausal power to, defend humanity. But we're not like we're not like inclined whatsoever to use like golden age tech, which is a direct result of the inspiration in what was given to us by the grace of the traveler, right? And expanding our lifetimes and our intelligence and things like that. Like we're not willing to go that route just because some catastrophic shit went down. Like we can't think of a way to contain it or make it better. The people in Neomuna did. They advanced Siva. Again, maybe Bungie has something up their sleeve. Maybe next season is the season of Siva, or the last season is something in that regard. And all of these questions get answered, and the whole fucking retcon conversation's dead, and everything is finite, so. Anywho.
Well, I think it summarizes what they were trying to achieve with Lightfall pretty nicely. And it says this: in a lot of previous releases, the seasons ramp up to a major expansion, which is kind of like the end of that story. The next set of seasons starts a new one. We saw this with Beyond Light and Witch Queen, right? Lightfall is a bit of a different experience in that it isn't just another ramp up, it's a bridge. There's the fallout, the deconstruction of events that happened, and the way the characters react to it. Each season will hand off the next more immediately than before. We want it to be the same when we hand off the final shape into what comes next. And so to kind of wrap this up, I think when you have the context of Lightfall being this experiment, and it obviously not really working, because I would think it's pretty fair to say that the majority of Destiny players didn't like the story of Lightfall, I think people are more critical of the story. And when you get that retcon scale, just because people are unhappy, they're going to be down towards the end of, oh, you're just rewriting this. And I kind of get it. And I kind of feel like it's...
I'll say this. I know Cross is hopped in here or there, but like his video is essentially like me just watching him watch Myelin. Like he's making some points, and I'm sure he'll have his final thoughts. But I mean, I'd expect more of like your reaction is just you kind of like shifting in camera. I don't know. I think the audience kind of wants a little bit more input. I mean, just saying. But with that aside, everyone that I've spoken to doesn't like the LIGHTFALL story, right? And I don't think it's they don't like the LIGHTFALL story for the story it's trying to tell. They don't like the story because things were omitted and not thoroughly explained as you would expect them to be, not just in the actual campaign missions, right? But through side quests attached to it that really doubled down on the drips that you get throughout playing the story. And then you're like, oh, okay. That I think would have been a great direction post narrative. Whatever they did in the Witchfall, whatever they did in the Witch Queen legendary campaign and how that story progressed and everything that was quest wise or story dripped outside of that campaign, that just should have been reiterated with LIGHTFALL because it was success. It's like, if it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it. You know what I mean? Just do the same thing. We loved it. And that's what everybody was expecting. As far as, again, we're talking just about story, right? All right. We're not talking about all the other quality of life things. But that didn't happen. And to drill down on Myelin's point, it was intentionally done like that because they wanted to experiment with a revamped seasonal model to explain what was omitted in the actual campaign narrative, right? Which is more of a business decision that I think Myelin is trying to communicate, which is a way to get people to buy in to the seasonal model, i.e. increase Bungie's revenue, right? Is it duplicitous? Right? I don't, that's up for you guys to decide. Business is business. Obviously it's working, right? So on the business side, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, unless, you know, our think tank can think of another way to grab an extra buck out of the casual player, right? But I don't like how they just didn't do the same story style that they released with Witchfall in the Witchfall. I keep saying Witchfall in the Witch Queen expansion. The same, and just do that with LIGHTFALL. It would just make sense.
Reasonable to think that way because of how LIGHTFALL was crafted and delivered. Okay, thanks for coming to...
Okay, the other issue with retconning too, by the way, guys, is the recent... Here's the other thing. When you get into the... Okay, is it perspective? Is it lies on the retcon scale? Well, hell, then we start to ask ourselves, was the most recent cutscene we saw where it shows us the origin of the witness?
You just wanted to show the cutscene.
Them interacting with the traveler, them building their civilization, them getting the veil, the traveler.
I love that ink style, man.
Is that a lie? What's actually supposed to be true? What? Like if you're like, Mr. Narrative Team, there's some inconsistencies here. Oh, it's because it's about perspective, or actually it's a deception. Okay, where do we draw that line? Are the cutscenes? Are we to even believe that? And I feel like Savathun did it so good. Because like in her dialogue with us, she would be like two truths and a lie. And, you know, she would give you the 3 things, right? And you'd be like, damn, all 3 of these sound way out there. And then as the seasons progress, you saw these things unfold. And you were like, holy shit, she was right. That was the truth. That one thing that sounded way out in left field was a truth. So I'm having an issue with the retcon side of things because...
So let me just say this. Cross, the reason that works so well is because it was stated, it was established by the narrative team, right? Like her title is the Queen of Deception, right? The Witch Queen, right? She manipulates reality, right? Your thoughts, your perception, right? Like she's duplicitous, she's deceptive, right? Like it's established, like that is the type of entity that she is. That's what she represents. So in story, right, which is, hey, let's give credit where credit's due. Narrative team, fucking brilliant, right? So you have a character that represents this deception. Well, how do I know everything that she's saying isn't bullshit? Well, as you're in the campaign, she says to you, 2 truths and a lie. And and either of them can go, any of those answers can go either way, right? So you really it really made you think, like, okay, well, what did I like read before? You know, what did I hear before? What did I see before to come up with an answer? You know, I mean, unless retcon is being instituted in that case, and like she's bullshitting about one of them lying because they're all lies, right? Then that just blows everything out of the water. I think what he's trying to like really finalize his thoughts on here is, it's not fair to leave your audience like cliffhanged and scratching their head at the same time, saying, well, even when I get the reveal of what's going to happen, how do I know that this is the truth, right? Like this is like what it is, because you have the ability to pull a retcon to claim it as being perception or deception, right? And that in and of itself is poor writing when it's instituted on a consistent basis, and you have that in your back pocket around every narrative corner.
Is when you show us cutscenes, or when you sell lore books, and Myelin knows way more about this, Bife knows way more about this, but just me looking at it from the surface,
there's a lot of lore content creators out there, not just Myelin and Bife.
What do we believe? Where do we draw the line here? You know, is it the cutscenes? When you load up, you know, stuff in the lore, and again, things are quoted in the lore, so maybe that's why. But like, it's got me questioning cutscenes that are provided by Bungie. Like, is this actual truth? I agree with Myelin on this stuff, and more so than that, whatever. Like we're offering solutions about LIGHTFALL's narrative, and you know, I'm not even gonna go to like the extent of saying like what should have been done. I think more girth is always better. You know, adding more depth. I've mentioned it. I gave the example in yesterday's video where it's like, you know, when you kill off a character like Rohan, like actually having a true bond and like learning about Neomuna, you know, that I feel like that would have been step one. I mean, we show up to this really dope ass city and we're like, you know, we're getting bits and pieces, but you have to like really be paying attention to like just random ass dialogue to even know what the hell's going on. And then on top of that, you know, the whole scene there with Rohan, that one really let me down, because it's like, I know Bungie's holding the sign up saying cry, feel emotion, and it's like, I feel nothing. But we'll see what ends up shaking out. My question to you guys, are you liking our seasons being beefier on the narrative side? That's really it. Would you rather annual expansions being front-loaded narratively, the seasons just kind of picking up lore pieces here and there? I feel like, why not both? You know, I feel like Bungie's presenting us with you can only have one or the other. You can only have all the answers and an annual expansion, but you have nothing for the seasons, or you can only have minimum answers in an annual expansion and everything have to be spread out over a year. I feel like with the amount of lore that's in Destiny, there is so much to talk about. There's so much to dive into that I feel like you could have the best of both worlds. You could still have narratively driven seasons, even if it's not tied directly to the narrative that's happening right then and there, but just like, you know, a season of on Neomuna itself and its origin, or what Myelin was just talking about, souped up Siva. Just stuff, and maybe we may end up getting that, but just stuff like that is okay without having to sacrifice the narrative that we had in LIGHTFALL.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.
All right. I'm just gonna rewind it back here. Thanks for coming to Myelin's moaning minute. That's more than a minute, man. And cross. All right, so final thoughts. Look, these two gentlemen are, you know, superior at their craft, and not just in Myelin's case, understanding and explaining in a clear and concise way what the lore is, either verbatim that's delivered to us by Bungie through in Destiny, but also his interpretation, his take on how they connect and what we can expect or anticipate moving forward. He's fantastic at his craft in doing that. Very educated. I believe he completed his PhD in, I want to say, psychology, right? He has his PhD, and I believe he works or had worked with like autistic individuals with disabilities, which is a tremendous endeavor for him to dedicate his time and his educational efforts to expand upon that topic. That really resonates with me personally, because my sister is severely autistic, as well as has multiple physical handicaps as well. And for someone, an individual like Myelin, who dedicated his time to working with people with disabilities, there's not enough people like that in the world. The stress that it puts on families to take care of individuals with severe disabilities is tremendous. And to have people that are also dedicating their lives to supporting and understanding and helping those that need assistance, you know, to help their loved ones, their siblings, what have you, is tremendous. So big ups to Myelin for that accomplishment and those goals that he set for himself, and his impact on the world, right? Aztecross, I mean, we all know, is a tremendous gamer and is extremely refined at, you know, putting out content on a consistent basis that's of superior quality. And you know, it's informative, it's entertainment, definitely an inspiration to me, and certainly in some respects, you know, a model of, you know, how I'd like to do things moving forward. You know, big ups to him for delivering it. I felt he was very passive in his reactions. It's pretty much just like, you know, here's me watching a video and I'll put some thoughts in at the end. And I guess that's what reaction videos are. Like, you really don't have to be as, you know, I feel, you know, maybe I talk too much, but you know, this is only the second time I've done something like this. And this isn't like a reaction to a reaction. This is a reaction to reaction to reaction. So this is like new school, I guess. I don't know if anyone else is doing this, but I respect these guys. And like I said earlier, you know, I'd love to grab a beer with these dudes and just shoot the shit and talk about things more. Who knows? Maybe in the future, somewhere, somehow. But I think it's cool that we're all on the same wavelength here in regards to LIGHTFALL fell short. We want more. And based upon our experience in Destiny and as streamers, as content creators, you know, what we're saying right now is representative of the majority of the community. I firmly believe that. We want more, you know, but I'm not going to go to the extreme and say like the story was dog shit, because like the foundation of the story and what it could have been, right? The bare bones of the story was awesome. You know what I mean? Cross said it himself. You're going to this cool city. Myelin said it. There's Advanced Siva. You know, the Callus story arc got completed. You learn more about the Witness. It's fucking with the Traveler. Now we have this thing called the Veil. What the fuck is this going on? You know what I mean? And then on top of it, you have the shit going down on Earth. You know, Marisov is in the mix. You know, another opportunity for me to simp over Homegirl. You know, it's like a lot of like cool things were happening, and that's what made Lightfall awesome. There's all this cool stuff going on, right? But it lost its coolness real quick because it wasn't expanded upon as you're actually playing the story, right? It was just like, here's enough to kind of wet your whistle, but it's not real. You digested it, but you're not full. Like, I want more. And that's where the story lacks, you know? And Cross makes a great point at the end, you know, Rohan, a character that you want to connect with, that you want to, you know, teardrop. And I'm an emotional guy, right? Like, I'm not afraid to admit, sometimes I watch movies, I get emotional, and it's just like, it tugs at my heartstring. I'm not afraid to admit it. You know what I mean? I'll shed that tear. But I didn't shed a fucking tear for Rohan. I was like, oh man, that sucks. You know, sucks to be you, dude. You know, lock and load. Bring me to the next fucking encounter. You know what I mean? His story, his character wasn't developed enough, and that's a perfect example as to why people, you know, think the story is shit, right? Because it wasn't expanded upon. And that's why it's getting discounted, and that's why these reaction videos are happening, and that's why what's going on, you know. I like how the scale represents the, you know, both extremes of the retcon ideology. Big ups to Myelin for, you know, presenting that. It definitely helps me formulate my opinions, not just on this topic, but for any type of retcon issue moving forward, whether it be in Destiny or outside. You'd never want to put handcuffs on a narrative team, but I'm certainly not going to be, you know, the group lead of the narrative team and on the whiteboard, you know, say, do whatever you want, whenever you want. And that's a way to get out of trouble. There has to be some finality in what you communicate to the consumer base regarding a story or regarding lore, right? The story arc needs to be completed. Things can't come full circle and then go in reverse back to a certain point and say, no, that was bullshit. And then the fucking arc dissipates and it becomes something entirely different. That can happen occasionally, once or twice. I don't know. I'd like to get your guys' feedback on it, but on a consistent basis, things should be finalized. There shouldn't be too much open-endedness to facts, right? Like the lore story, the creation story, that's just the Witness throwing propaganda out there. Well, then what is and what's not propaganda, man? If that's going to be the narrative team's focus moving forward, and Cross expanded upon it, you know, why even bother? You know what I mean? Just give me the loot and let me shoot shit, and the story is completely secondary. What makes Destiny great is the characters in the universe and the lore that's behind it. You know, it's not just the amazing gunplay and the abilities and the subclass synergies and all of that. Like, that's a huge part of it. But like the immersiveness that you have when you're playing the game, right? The mise en scene, the fantastic skyboxes, and then it just makes you almost puts you in character and makes you role play, and you know, it doubles down on I'm wielding the light against the darkness, or I'm manipulating the darkness to fight back against the darkness, right? It's just, you know, and you start thinking about all the characters and all the stories, and it just makes the experience more enjoyable and more immersive, whether you're conscious of it or just subconsciously. I think that seeps in. But if there's anything like a severe left turn with a retcon ideology from the narrative team, if that's how they're going to be going forward next season, the final season, and especially in the final shape, I mean, those that like Destiny are still going to be playing Destiny, but you're going to get a lot more reaction videos like this, and there'll be a lot more angst and a lot more toxicity regarding the story. And who the fuck wants that? Not me, not you. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. As always, let's level up together. I'm going to be putting out some more of my reaction to them reacting to their reactions. Let's see, you know, what else pops up. Thanks again for joining me on stream live to watch these gentlemen's takes on this issue. Be safe, stay vigilant, and as always, may the light protect us all. Peace. Thank you for watching. Likes and shares are very much appreciated, and subscribe for more Destiny 2 content. Peace.